So I'm Tim Polson from Klaveness Digital. Very quickly about us, it's a digital company that was spun out of the 12-old Klaveness group following some successes in solving supply chain problems using digitalization. Standardization is close to our mantra because we have a visibility solution and a whole ideal at Klaveness that collaboration and having everything in the same place to refer to is a win for everybody. And you might ask, why am I wearing my face mask and nobody else's? This is not only to prevent COVID transmission, this is because I hope to lead an exciting panel debate, and it's to avoid any projectiles that anybody might send my way. So before we do introductions, just to set the scene about standardization in the shipping industry and harmonization. Can anybody tell me about the prisoner's dilemma? Prisoner's dilemma. Anybody? Shout. Can't see, I'm staring at really bright lights. Okay, let me describe it. Right, so let's just say Peter and I have just robbed a bank. And we're sitting in two separate holding cells. And police are questioning us. If we both deny it, then the police are going to have a hard time pressing charges. Both of us might only get 1 year in prison. It's not bad, right? Robbing a bank and you only get 1 year in prison. However, if I blame him, he gets 4 years and I go scot-free. But if I do that and he blames me, we both blame each other, and then the cops are like, yeah, you guys are both guilty, you both get 4 years. So if we deny and we collaborate without talking to each other, we get 1 year. But if we blame the other, we might get 4 years and we might go scot-free. So let's think about that in the context of harmonization. How do we collaborate in that scenario where we're not really communicating with the others as such, we're relying on the principle of collaboration for the greater good? Okay, if I could just get everyone to just introduce themselves very briefly.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me? I'm Stephen. I'm the Vice President of ISACA Singapore Chapter. For those of you who are unfamiliar with ISACA itself, Okay, sorry about that. I'm the Vice President of ISACA Singapore Chapter. For those of you who are unfamiliar with ISACA, ISACA is a non-profit thought leadership association that provides thought leadership in the areas of IT governance, risk, compliance, cybersecurity. We have 146,000 members across 224 chapters in 188 countries. In the Singapore chapter itself, we have 3,000 members. So our members are CISOs, they are head of audits, head of compliance, head of risk, and so forth. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ken Hasegawa from MC Shipping Singapore. So I joined the Mitsubishi Corporation, the trading house in Japan, 10 years back, and in the shipping industry since then. And now heading chartering and innovation activities in MC Shipping Singapore, which is basically the ship owning arm of Mitsubishi. So yeah, as we discussed today, I also believe in the beauty of harmonization or open innovation, and I'm pleased to see lots of great initiatives in our industry, from digitalization, decarbonization to safety matters as well. But I feel like many of them are initiated by operators, cargo owners, authorities, or tech companies. And I personally believe there's a lot more that ship owners can take a part. So we as ship owners want to contribute to our industry to help the industry transforming to digital, to green, and yeah, that's what our organization is aiming at, and I'm happy to be a part of discussion today. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Yong. I'm from the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore. I'm the CIO. Okay, I oversee both the digitalizations for in MPA, which covers both the MPA digital workplace as well as the maritime digitalizations. I also oversee the cybersecurity for the maritime sector. Okay, for digitalization, in fact, for MPA, data harmonization is one of the key strategies that we are embarking. Just last year, around July, we actually had a MOU signed with 5 partners to look at, under this initiative, Digital Oceans, and where Ocean stands for Open, Common, Exchange, and Network Standardization, where we truly believe that the harmonization of data will lead to a more interoperable. Just now we had this exercise on interoperability. So interoperable platform to platform, digital platform to platform integration in terms of flow of informations, and that will actually benefit the whole industries. Yeah. Later we can share more in the subsequent discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, we met already several times today. Peter Schellenberger from Thome Group, and I'm quite happy to sit here because we have to increase the scope and the input of owners and managers in order to have relevance on the subject, I would say. I have a couple of remarks. First of all, I'm very happy to have the Japanese share here because it shows us one thing. We have to look out for best-in-class participation to the subjects, and the Japanese, without any doubt, have a good advantage here and have spent a lot of time and energy with this. So I think our job here as an industry initiative is to verify where the best inputs come from and do not reinvent the wheel. Because one of the risks that an industry runs is that there's so many silos in which similar developments take place. So I guess what we can do is network so strongly that everyone knows of each other, and that we can then identify and agree what are the best initiatives so that we can really be mindful of the resources that we spend in time, money, and effort. So in that sense, I think this is a very good initial stage, and that is, for me, what SMN stands for.
Okay. First question. What's a success story of standardization in the shipping industry at the moment? What do we do well in terms of standardization? Don't have to go in order, just anybody yell out. Or also the audience can yell out. Are 20 and 40 foot containers a good example of standardization? Or are they a bad example?
Of course, they're an excellent example, and you know it. We don't have a USB stick yet in the shipping industry. But I guess the biggest challenge that we have is the standardization of vessels. And we're totally far away from that. If you talk to the colleagues that spend a lot of time with autonomous vessels, they basically tell you that for complicated journeys, as long as vessels are not standardized, and even vessels that come out of one shipyard and are sister vessels, they have very often differing systems. So I think as long as we don't get anywhere closer to standardizing vessel types, then the challenge will remain as to where and how quickly we can go. So, but of course we are all aware of the challenges that are going along with that. But I would say this is a long way to go.
Okay, so Yong, maybe you can add to this. Given that there is a lack of standardization, as someone like MPA, who is globally renowned as a leader, Singapore especially as a leader in this sort of thing, how do you create something, and how do you instill something that people can follow?
Okay, for in the area of these standardizations, we are actually looking at how, because today we know that the shipping lines, when they call on a port, and depending on different countries, they have all different reporting formalities. and they submit different, I mean, it could be the same information, but they have to submit multiple times to all the ports that they called to. So one of the rationale that we think standardization will help is reducing this administrative burden to the shipping lines. When they arrive in a port, today they have to submit a lot of duplicate information. Not say duplicate, but repetitive information to the port authorities. So, and if we can standardize or harmonize the data required, it will reduce the repetitive submissions of some of the documents, and some of them could be common documents that, in fact, when they leave the last port of call, they could even share it with the next port of call. And we think this will help the industry to be more efficient. Yeah.
I think standardization is also important in the context of decarbonization, the another dominant topic in our industry. So all the stakeholders are getting more and more keen to know what is the actual consumption of ship, what is the exact number of greenhouse gas emission. But we haven't had any methods to capture the actual number on board. And so in that context, I think one of the examples is the Sea Cargo Charter, just launched last year, is an example of the good private sector-led initiatives in that area. So I hope, or I'd like to help building up those kind of initiatives in various areas.
For me, I see standardization in the context of cybersecurity. So, I mean, we all heard about what NotPetya has done, the ransomware attack a few years back. And last year, in the COVID-19 new normal itself, we see threats in the supply chain, both in the maritime, both in the non-maritime based supply chain, as well as the maritime supply chain. So for the non-maritime based supply chain, we see reviews of whether you can use Zoom. We see attacks on VPN services, and more recently we see attacks on SolarWinds. And even just, I think today, there was a fourth malware that was found in the SolarWinds supply chain breach. And Malwarebytes is one of the, it is the fourth security company that has been breached, right? So I see standardization an important area in cybersecurity, focusing on three main areas. One is cybersecurity standards, in terms of standardization of standards. Secondly is on intelligence sharing, and third is on incident management practices. So in the area of cybersecurity standards, over the recent months, we have seen IMO releasing guidelines, but it is specific to more towards shippers, less on the ports. We have seen US releasing a national maritime cybersecurity plan. NISA released cybersecurity risk assessment guidelines, and so forth. They are focusing on different aspects. From the global perspective, I think more synergetic standardization can be done. I think Singapore has done well in this area through I think Yong and his team. They have provided regulatory framework, a cybersecurity code of practice for Singapore port operators as well as shippers in terms of in this area. But I feel that more definitely can be done to streamline the standards, and for in the areas of operational technology, a lot of times I think global standards that cover operational technology, and for vendors to be mindful of these nuances of operational technology and be able to provide contextualized equipment and services to the maritime, and then I think that is important. The second point I want to make is on the intelligence sharing. So when last year there were a number of maritime shipping operators which got attacked and breached. Of course, in the minds of the different maritime companies, right, in the supply chain, what you're wondering in your mind is what has happened to these companies? Are the threats, are you vulnerable to the same threats? In cybersecurity terms, we call them indicators of compromise and IOCs, and tools, tactics, and procedures, which are TTPs. And a lot of maritime companies are kept in the dark of what is happening because there is, I would say, still insufficient sharing, because the hackers are sharing a lot among themselves. They are reusing tools, ransomware creators, they are reusing their ransomware applications and software. But on the blue team side, in the protection side, are we sharing enough intelligence, right? Because if we do not share enough intelligence, what happens is that one company may just perform a draw breach, what is otherwise known as a draw breach, which means to block the access from the infected or compromised company, right? And that is to safeguard its own crown jewels and assets, because it doesn't know what is going on in the other company that has been breached. But if there is enough sharing in a safe harbor format that does not bring across liability to the company which share this information, that will be helpful. And I see the United States making great strides in this area. They set up the MTS ISAC, or Information Security Analysis Center, which promotes and fosters the exchange of information in a safe harbor and a safe anonymized manner. So that level of standardization will definitely help in harmonization. And the last point I want to make is with regards to incident management, to have sort of incident playbooks, standardized incident playbooks across the maritime companies in the supply chain itself. So when one company is breached, we know exactly how to handle and what to handle, what to manage. For instance, during an incident, out-of-band communications are required. So the upstream and downstream players in the maritime supply chain, they may be wondering what are the email addresses to use if the email addresses are no longer accessible in a ransomware attack. And if these playbooks and standard operating procedures are not put in place in advance to determine what sort of whitelisted email addresses, whether it's Google or Yahoo, is going to be used, then there will be a lot of delay in terms of business recovery. You'll be seeing for the first time new Gmail addresses, for instance, new Gmails being used, and you'll be wondering to yourself, should I trust these Gmail addresses that has been communicated to me as means of communications? Yeah. So that's what I have to share.
Okay, that's interesting. And what is most interesting about this is that so far we've heard about the standardization of cybersecurity, decarbonization, some input from regulatory position, and the double work around cross-border information exchange, and then autonomous vessels and information silos. What does this very discussion tell us about the shipping industry? It's very, very complex, and this problem of standardization is not a one-size-fits-all. So, in the aim to start an argument, whose responsibility is it to standardize? And again, you don't have to go in any order. You can just shout out. Whose responsibility?
I think nobody's responsible. Is responsible, but the beneficiaries are clear. So the beneficiaries have problem statements. So if there's no regulatory inputs coming or help from service providers, that means that we have to eventually engage ourselves, because we cannot just sit and wait and complain for years on end that our organizations do not do enough for us or not the right scope. So we have to also then help them in the right direction, I would say. Shipping is very inflexible, so some areas are depending on regulatory things like cybersecurity. Until today, shipping companies are still not willing to pay real money for protection because they think I'll worry about it when it happens to me. Still not being clear that it's much more expensive a solution. But to come back to your question, I think this is the beauty that we can try to harmonize the input various the stakeholders who generally would not talk to each other. If you look at the various stakeholders that have been in this room at least this morning, and people that are interested in those topics, that there's an element of hope.
So, Yong, by saying that we can't wait for the regulators to do something, Peter has effectively said that you're not working fast enough.
Okay. Okay. For standardizations, I believe today there are international organizations and also ISO, right? They are looking at having a common format or data standards. So I know there are various international organizations taking these standardization steps. One of them is under IMO. They have this expert group for data harmonization that was formed in 2019, where there are many representatives from the various members, including international organization and standards body, talking about harmonizing the data related to the file competence. Yeah. So I think there are really people taking a lead to standardize, and what we need to is probably to when we build. Okay, since this is about technology, when we build technology, we should be trying to align to some of these standards, so that it will help to, because when we talk about the business, people are looking at end to end, the flow of information, so that this whole transaction, this whole activity is carried out the most efficient way. And to do that, if we fall back to our own internal proprietary standards, then this will impede this whole, and then for companies who go on this path, they will end up probably being less competitive.
Yeah, I actually, Kinson, sorry to interrupt. I have a different question for you on the subject of decarbonization. How do you make people standardize? How do you make companies and even nations standardize so that the carbon abatement doesn't fall on the shoulders of one party more than another? How do we get the shipping companies who are dragging the chain in terms of decarbonization to catch up to the others?
Yeah, that's a difficult question, but yeah, as been discussed many times, even today, technology is not a problem. So yeah, technology is already there. So yeah, we have also been keen to look into some startups technologies, and yeah, in terms of carbon tracking or decarbonization, there are lots of convincing technologies, from nano sensors, satellites, utilizing cameras, utilizing smartphone applications. So the thing is how to build up the business structure and how to incentivize stakeholders, for me, ship owners, to go into those technologies. So at this moment, purely from ship owners' point of view, we have no incentives to pay additional 50K bucks or something to put new sensors on board, or yeah, pay subscription fee for any satellite services. So I think in order to change that, we only have two options. One is oblige people to do so, or economically incentivize people to do so. So I'm personally believing in the latter option, and always thinking of how people can be incentivized to adopt new technologies. And maybe, I don't know about the carbon offsets structure, could be an option in our industry as well, as we've seen in lots of other industries, from mining to energy sections.
That's interesting. And sorry, Steve, I'll get to you in a moment, but you said something interesting then, which Knuckles said before from Wilhelmsen. You said that we have sufficient technology today to make this happen. For example, standardization. Does anybody think that we do not have sufficient technology today to enable standardization and harmonization? And if you disagree, what technological advancements do you think need to happen to enable standardization?
If I may share my views with regards to maritime operational technology. In general, operational technology itself is still a long way from maturity. Still some way from maturity. It's improving, but it's still some way from maturity, because we all know operational technology is built as a closed network and insecure by design. So in the past, ship systems are enclosed in ring-fence networks. Port systems are enclosed in ring-fence network, where the SCADA systems, the PLCs, they are ring-fenced. Hence, there is not much of a concern with cybersecurity. But with data, where it is a new oil, and you need data analytics, you need to expose your systems to be able to get the sensory information to do perform analytics upon. And the boundaries have been is becoming more porous. And with that, the exposure to cybersecurity is very real. And for operational technology, because they are not secured by design, a number of them, they were built in the days where it's closed network. So you have hard-coded passwords, you have protocols that are not encrypted from IT. That means they are not secured from eavesdropping. Therefore, you have to overlay all these setups with additional security controls. They are patchwork, and it is improving. More recognition in this space is catching up. So, but there's still some way to go, which is why I highlighted earlier that it would be good if operational technology vendors, whether it's the key crane systems, yacht crane systems, ship side systems, when they develop the systems, whether it's shore side or ship side, develop it with cybersecurity built in place, whether it's authentication, authorization, or encryption, rather than having as an open system and letting the customers taking the effort to figure out how to mitigate down the risk effectively. Yeah.
Okay, so from this I can detract that yes, we do have this. Of course, we have the technology available, but it's down to finance and it's down to incentivizing people to invest the money. And I keep saying people instead of organizations, because again, calling from Knuckles' presentation, this is a people thing. It's not it's not necessarily anything else. So right, we've got the technology available on Earth. Can we agree? Or is there something that needs to be invented to enable standardization? And Ken-san, you mentioned economic incentives. So let's talk about that. So I've said who's responsible. Now, who's going to pay? Who's going to pay for standardization? And let's think about internet banking. Has anybody heard of an internet banking surcharge? No? Anybody ever paid an internet banking surcharge or a banking app surcharge? No. Why do you think that is? I think it's because the banks, of course, developing this stuff costs tens of millions, right? But what does it save the banks? Saves money, right? So they're incentivized to make the customer's experience more efficient and standardize their own operations, because it makes them more money. It's more valuable to them. How could that translate to shipping? What kind of value could be gained from standardization? If we were marketing standardization to the rest of the shipping industry, what would the poster say? What would the sales pitch be?
Well, as clients, we want to have diversity in the problem-solving approach, right? So the first step, I think, that we spend also a lot of time with in Smart Maritime Network is about the elephant in the room that was a data ownership. So the first precondition was to be very, very clear that the ship owner is also the owner of the data. So only then he can engage in the standardization part to enable and open the road for, let's say, also startups or any kind of service provider based on that standardized data to do something with it. And I think that is the journey that we're on. And we do realize that some of the big players, of course, would have a much easier run when they would also own the data. And simply as clients, we don't want to be controlled on that side, because shipping has only quite late realized the value of its own data.
Okay, anybody else? Value proposition of standardization and harmonization. How can everybody win out of this?
If I may chip in on the cybersecurity side of things, I think the issue can be addressed similarly to how IoT is being addressed. So we have a lot of Internet of Things, and you know, the smart homes. We have heard about hacking of Internet of Things, how easily they are hacked, people getting their cameras breached, and so forth. And what Singapore is trying to do, the government is trying to do, is to come up with a cybersecurity labeling scheme. So it is like a trust mark. Whether you trust a power strip that you bought from the market, or whether you trust an electric appliance that you bought from a shopping complex, there is a trust mark over there. So that gives consumers confidence. And I think that this all boils down to public-private partnership. And it is important to incentivize standardization that in the space of cybersecurity, the regulators have to be involved and to set certain baselines and establish certain trust marks for the consumer. So whether you are a shipping port operator, whether you are a vessel operator, the systems that you bought to put in place, how do you know it is of certain security, cybersecurity standard? With that trust mark, that will definitely help a lot. And it is my wish that international organizations like IMO can establish such standards for maritime equipment and services. Yeah.
Maybe I can add on from more perspective. There is under this industry revolution 4.0, I think more and more we'll be using AI, artificial intelligence, and we'll need a lot of data, right? And you asked about the business case for organization. I mean, similar to banking. I'll see that moving ahead, if we want to make more informed or draw a lot of analytics from the data, it pays to standardize, because you need that capability to do more under this digitalization 4.0, and a lot of the future operations, you could be using robots or technologies to augment your operations. So this data you have to collect them, and one of a key enabler will be standardizations. Yeah, if everybody refer to the same thing in the other way, you will have issues trying to make sense. Yeah. So that's one perspective.
Yeah, if I can add, so yeah, one of the challenges our shipping industry have compared to aviation industry or banking services you mentioned is the complexity of the supply chain or charter chain. So the load is divided into ship owners, operators, cargo owners, bunker suppliers, ship repeaters, etc. So yeah, in internet banking services, it's simple. The banks are incentivized to invest in their in developing their own service to directly sub to the customer. But in shipping, especially in the bulk carriers, which I'm in now, it's a little bit complicated, and yeah, that's the challenge we are facing today.
Okay, so an interesting thing that I read recently was that Elon Musk, and I'm not taking Elon Musk's side or not, just saying, he wrote a paper and published it for free for the public on battery technology, his own research on battery technology. He just shared it with the public. And a critic said, "You're out of your mind. That must be millions of dollars worth of IP, and you're just giving it away." You know, Toyota and Volkswagen are going to pick this up, and they're going to use it. They're going to use it against you. And he said, it depends on what you consider as use it against you. If they're making more effective electric cars, and they're installing more charging stations in service stations, and if consumers are being more and more warming to the concept of electric cars, is that being used against me? No. It's helping me sell more electric cars and more batteries. What are the implications of that in the shipping industry? What paper would you write? And what would you share to assist the standardization drive? Because that's what we need to do. We need to share and collaborate. And again, I invite any questions from the audience who have been somberly quiet so far.
I can give you an example from the eGenie platform that we're working on. We are trying to standardize the stores on board and the quality and description thereof. So in order to do that and to have an impact globally in the supply chain, what we had to do first is of all the users and the suppliers of these items to throw the historic data in a huge pot and do an ABC analysis in order to find out what is actually being used as part of the OPEX. And even the benchmark competitors decided that this was a good thing to do. And from there, we have now built what you would say a globally relevant base. Now, if this gets the traction that we hope it will get, you will see that the large suppliers will benefit greatly because they know exactly what are the items that we really need and want, and how to store, how to optimize their own warehouse choices and capacities, and also to install semi-automatic quoting systems in tenders. So this is probably a use case in the marine industry of standardization and collaboration, also of competitors, which in the marine industry has always been a big hurdle because competitors simply in the past have not shared.
And this is an easy one for you, Yong, because you're constantly trying to get people to share more, right, and progress more. So.
Okay, so if you ask me what is the one, the question is about one paper that we can put out to promote standardization. Okay. I mean, just now the example of decarbonization. I think decarbonization is it's not just it's an international thing. It's not just a company, right? Because we are all operating under this environment where there is with this global climate change and global warming, so decarbonization is a common one of the common objectives. But everyone will approach it differently, right? So one of the area that if the data standardizations could also helps the indoor operations, the ships out there, if they know that, for example, today, they know that the port is not available for you to berth today. You cannot berth on arrival. They will not. They can actually. They don't have to speed up, right? So in terms of their route planning, their route scheduling, because of this common data that is available for all to consume, they can plan their route better. And I don't think they will end up coming to the port and then have to wait to be berthed. And that will actually cause the fuel because of waiting time. And I thought one of the rationales or one of the justification for such standard, because this data will be used by many shippings or navigation system out there, right? And if you subscribe to that, you get to know the situations. You can adjust your route planning or even your time. So I thought that is one of the business case for standardization in the area of helping to lower down the carbon footprint. Yeah.
And I'm so happy to hear you say that, because that's one of the things that that our system aims to do is improve the planning so that ships can operate at lower speeds and a more optimal speed. Sorry for the shameless plug for our product, but anyway, yeah. It's and Ken, sorry, we've only got a couple of minutes left, but yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure whether I'm answering your question, but if we ask ourselves, what is our industry having for, and who is our ultimate customer? Maybe the purpose is to carry the cargo safely on time with less GHG emissions, and if we go back to that point and think about what is needed to enable that purpose. Ideally speaking, I think we should be having one platform where people can see that the actual performance of the ship, not what is described in the description, and the track record of the ship, including some accidents record. So, yeah, if that kind of platform is available in our industry, I think it's going to help us in lots of aspects, I think.
Yep. In the space of cybersecurity again, I see a success story, and that is with the Maritime Transport Systems Information Sharing Analysis Center, or MTS ISAC. It was formed February 2020, and it now has a lot of members. And the benefit that the members get is the sharing of intelligence. When one company gets breached, how they got breached, how to defend against the breach is shared in a safe harbor format with the rest of the membership. And as a result, every member benefit from the rest of the members through this early warning of threats. And therefore, if a ransomware attack impacts a shipping line, the rest of the shipping lines and port operators who are members of this association will be able to defend themselves against it. So that is where I feel the incentive of sharing comes about in the space of cybersecurity.
Okay. Any questions from the floor or from the virtual audience? Yeah. Any questions for any of the panelists? Sorry, go ahead.
So when it comes to ship data sharing protection, there's some kind of enforcement on this area. So do you think this move will be leading a good standardization towards harmonization?
I feel like that's directed at you, Stephen. Cybersecurity. No.
I'm trying to get a question. Your question, you're talking about ship data protection, data sharing. I think the data is desensitized to yet with enough metadata to go with it. So data can always be masked or tokenized so that it's in a shareable format that can be used for analytics. And in terms of technology advancements, thought processes have been, I mean, there's a lot of thinking into homomorphic encryption and so forth, where data is encrypted in the cloud, yet you can still analyze them despite them being encrypted because of the metadata that is attached to them through homomorphic encryption. I'm not too sure whether that answers your question, but in cybersecurity, the space of cybersecurity, when data is sensitive, it typically gets either masked or tokenized. Masked, tokenized, so that you can still mask. Of course, once it's masked, you can't perform a lot of activities with it. But if it's tokenized, you can still analyze the data and then subsequently translate it back to its more sensitive form. I'm not sure whether that answers your question. I'm coming from the cybersecurity perspective. Yeah.
Okay, maybe you guys could catch up on that later on if there's still further detail needed. Here, you had a question from the virtual audience?
Yeah, so there are a couple of questions from the chat box. So Leroy Diaz from Steel Core Dubai. What would be your advice to startups? How can they get access to large ship owners, managers, to pitch their innovative digital offerings?
It's a very complex question, but the first advice is to not come up with their own very intelligent solutions, but to listen first what the real problem statements are, and never to forget that an idea is never good enough in itself. It has to be monetizable, particularly for a startup. So if it doesn't save money, bring more efficiencies, or cannot be quantified or monetized, the idea is not good enough.
There's another question from Chris Crowley. Do you feel that the increased focus on decarbonization will drive digitalization due to ships being required to provide real-time information on fuel consumption and emissions?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. Yeah, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Do you feel that increased focus on decarbonization will drive digitalization due to ships being required to provide real-time information on fuel consumption and emissions?
Yeah, I think yes. So, yeah, presently what we are doing today is owners just guarantee speed and consumption per day, and nobody has an access to frequent data on board. But there's a lot of inefficiencies due to that. But if the whole industry is turning into more focusing on decarbonization, frequent data availability is inevitable, of course, and yeah, lots of digital solution needs to be adopted there.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. I'm sorry we've run out of time. We've actually gone 5 minutes over. Now, these gentlemen will be around here, so if anybody has any further questions, they can either put them on the virtual chat or speak to them later. So, well, will standardization lead to harmonization? I think the answer is we'll see. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Really appreciate it.